Hello and welcome for the 10th episode of Sheepdog Brotherhood. And here's why this one's special. I actually have with me in my house the one and only Brett Atterbury. How you doing, Brett?
I'm good, Doug. We're like, how far apart are we from right now?
We're about
staring at each other.
because we are not technically savvy at all. It's taken us like an hour now to figure out how to be in the same room and record it ourselves. Yeah. So here's proof that we're together. You ready? Hey, Brett. How you doing?
Just in case anyone wanted proof. Yeah, we probably should have hired somebody for the tech part of this.
Yeah.
We should take a picture of this setup we have right now.
Neither Brett nor I have any technical savvy whatsoever. There may be a weird pause in there. I don't know if we'll have, like elevator music playing in the background while we edit this back together again. But we got cut off, even though we're in the same room on the same Wi-Fi.
Isn't it funny that just as we were talking about how technically incompetent we were,
we lost connection.
Yeah, that's probably not a coincidence. Yeah.
So here we are on our 10th episode. I don't think it's not been a year since the initial thought of the Sheepdog Brotherhood, and in its infancy, right, had zero name. It was just this thing.
It was Doug and Brett think of things and say them.
Yeah.
And that's not a very good branding title.
So then we came up with the name of the Sheepdog Brotherhood, and I don't know if we've covered that in a previous episode, but you want to cover sort of what our thinking was behind Sheepdog Brotherhood and sort of how we got there?
So, and yeah, you can add to this, but we were, as we were kind of throwing this idea around, like what was the genesis? Well, we knew that something was wrong with men in our culture. And, we use various words for it, but let's just kind of capture it as men are weak and need to stand up and do things. And then specifically, we're like, well, there's plenty of that out there about how weak men are, and they need to not be weak anymore, need to be stronger men. But then we start thinking about, well, what's kind of something that we see that manifests itself that's a real problem? Mm-hmm. And we thought, men toward women, especially in the work that I do, we've talked about the pro-life work that I do, but where you can really see it. We're like, okay, that's a very interesting niche because men need to do a much better job as being stronger, but certainly towards empowering women, dignifying women. And then as we were both starting to do some research about that, I came across this quote from St. John Paul II. I still can't remember to this day, where I found it, but found it somewhere doing internet search. Mm-hmm. And that quote really stuck with me, which is, God has assigned as a duty to every man the dignity of every woman. And I remember I screen captured that or something and texted it to you. And you were like, man, if ever there was something captured in just 14 words of what it is that we've been talking about the past few months, there it is.
And then I remember sitting on your patio, kind of talking about man, we both come from marketing and sales, and we need to represent what it is we're trying to get men to aspire to. We need some sort of hook. We need something that signifies the type of man that we're calling men to be. And you started at the time I was listening to a number of podcasts because I love podcasts, and I had heard this concept about a sheepdog and wolves and sheepdogs. And the idea behind a sheepdog, what they do is they protect the flock. And they don't always do it because they love the flock, but they recognize that they have a duty to protect, these sheep. And I had this picture of they will do it to the death, right? They will stand in the space of the field between the wolf or the coyote or whatever and the sheep to protect them. And I thought of, okay, a sheepdog is pretty cool. Unfortunately, there isn't a cool, mean-looking sheepdog You wouldn't look at a standard sheepdog and go, that looks like a bad.
Ferocious.
Yeah, exactly. That's a ferocious looking dog. You're like, oh, I want to pet it. Yeah. So, but then the idea of brotherhood, right? This feeling of showing men that we need to stand in the gap and stand in the breach between what society does to women and women. How do we stand there? How do we take a stand and protect them and fulfill that idea of dignifying women as our duty? But rather than just getting on a podcast or creating a podcast and blathering on about what we think, let's figure out a way to bring these men together. And then here's the best part, and this is part of the why we wanted to talk on our 10th episode, of what this brotherhood seeks to do. And I think you do the best job of really articulating. So we're going to teach men how to stand in the gap and what that means, what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. But what is the brotherhood? What are we going to do with, now that we've got a group of men together, where do we go from here? What's that call to action, and what are we going to do with that? Take it away, Brett.
So, Doug, it comes down to, like I said, not that dropping to your knees and praying about it or getting together with other men and talking about it and coming up with ideas for solutions. Nothing wrong with that, of course. But ultimately, are you going to put any of those solutions into effect? Or are you going to take action, right?
Are you going to take action to dignify women?
Yeah. And so here's what
are we going to do?
Yeah. Men a lot of times don't know what to do. They think about their assets that they have of time, talent, and treasure, and they're not quite sure how to put those into action in order to actually make something happen. So we thought, many of these men are very busy. They're not going to really know what to do, and maybe they don't have the time. They might, but one thing that we know every man can do is give a little bit of treasure, right, towards something. And through the work that I do, I know about organizations out there that work in different ways on the front lines to empower women in challenging situations. So our idea was, as we start to put into effect this membership, for example, some kind of membership fee, that we would take a portion of that and put it towards these kinds of organizations.
And
yes,
a large portion.
We haven't decided what that large portion is in terms of a specific number, but a large portion of that, because then the men who are giving that membership can know that through their treasure, they're actually supporting those organizations that are doing things on the front line to empower women.
Women.
So that's the idea.
Yep. So Brett, as we've been talking about, we've defined why Sheepdog. We've defined why Brotherhood. What are we going to do? We're not just going to get together every week and do a podcast. What is the actionable thing that we seek to do, and what problem are we going to solve? Can you cover that?
So we're going to take a portion of the Sheepdog Brotherhood's collective membership fees and put that towards organizations that I know from my relationships with these organizations empower women. That's the short answer.
That's simple.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to take a portion of the membership fee. We're going to give it to organizations that empower women. You and I have talked about sort of the 3 tiers of what some of those empowerment issues need to be. One is financial stability, so that, as you'll talk about here with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, giving women the short-term financial leg up, help, support that they need. The second is helping to advance women in their professional careers so that they can, continue to move closer to what you call self-actualization. And then the third would be the foundational problem that we see in society is education. And that's, I think, both, honestly, not just for women, but for men as well. And I'm not talking education like college and high school and elementary school, but understanding where value comes from. How do I, when I look in the mirror, how do I see myself and how do I value myself? it isn't because I've got a TikTok page. It isn't because I have 10,000 viewers on Instagram, which I don't, by the way. It's where does that value come from? And once we recognize where that actual value comes from, we then look at ourselves differently. And when you look at yourself differently, you will begin to look at others differently. And I think that could be one of the really big issues we have right now. I mean, everyone's walking around with a cell phone, taking selfies. They're not eating food. They're taking photos of food, right? Like, just because you take a snapshot of a steak on your plate doesn't make you a foodie. It makes you a person that likes taking photographs of food, you know. And we're so wrapped up in what we think society values that we're working towards always ticking that box and showing greater value to society rather than where our true value comes from. So anyway, the 3 pillars: short-term financial need, career advancement, career development, and education. Could you cover in more detail?
Yeah, I think a great framework that everybody can use to look at this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, well known for, I think, over a century now, or about a century. And so what is that? It looks like a triangle. And from the bottom part, this first layer or the first pillar that you talked about is just basic security, like food and shelter and clothing. And from Maslow's perspective, which I think makes sense, unless you have that, you don't even start to think about other higher order things that you might do, like you were talking about career, self-actualization. Mm-hmm. Because when you're in a dire situation like that, you're just worrying about where am I going to get my next meal? Or a lot of times with single women with children, how am I going to feed my children? So in that situation, if I haven't taken care of that, I can't start talking to you about, well, you know, you need to take this class so that you can upgrade your skills. The person's looking at you like, the woman's looking at you like, I just need to eat right now. I need to feed my children.
Yeah.
So these organizations that work on empowering women, you're going to take care of that need first. You have to get a woman there where she feels secure before her mind and heart are open to start to talk about other things. Mm-hmm. Once that happens, then you can start to talk about, now let's upgrade that into, for example, career and education or skill development.
Okay.
Because once you move into that area and start to work on that, and that starts to be taken care of, now a woman is starting to have confidence. She's starting to go, oh, there's a bigger picture here. I was created for a purpose, for a mission. And that's that final tier is starting to talk about, why am I here? Like, what is my purpose? What was I put on earth to do? Mm-hmm. And so that's really, when you talk about empowering women, you're talking about stair-stepping through those things. Basic needs and security, on to starting education, development, starting to have some kind of skills. And then once somebody has that in hand, they start to think about the higher order purpose. Mm-hmm. Like, what am I doing here? So we talk about in the Sheepdog Brotherhood giving to these organizations. We're looking at organizations that do that. And here's an important part, that also prove through metrics that they're actually having success in doing that. And that's so important because in the nonprofit world, whether it's pro-life or any other thing, a lot of times there are people with great hearts, that are very mission oriented, and they're like, oh, I got to start a nonprofit so I can help solve, problem X, whatever that is. And they have great passion for it, and that's wonderful. But when you look at, are they getting results? Are they having measurable results of solving the problem that they were going out to solve? A lot of times the answer is not really. Mm-hmm. They're out there passionately doing something, but whatever that something is that they're doing isn't getting the effect, the result that they said that they wanted to solve.
And I feel like they also have these two issues. One, they become an organization, granted with a mission, but suddenly they go from fundraising to advance the mission to fundraising to keep the lights on.
Sure.
And, so that's one problem. And then the other problem is, it's someone's passion project and they have this calling, they have whatever, this innate desire to go and be helpful. Yeah. but without a roadmap, without a set of directions, or without, like most things, failure to plan is planning to fail, right? So they're like, of course this will work. I'm passionate about it, and I know it's a good thing. So of course it's going to work. And then here's the other part. They're just competing against other people who also have the same exact mission, who are trying to achieve the same good for society or whatever group. And they're all just competing for the same dollar, right?
Yeah.
Why not approach the problem in a different light? And that's sort of what we're trying to do, is be a for-profit nonprofit. Because I think if we run this group like a business, we are far more likely to succeed, because we will be forced to make strategic decisions from a marketing standpoint that says, how do we get this message to more people? What do we need to do? Hey, Brett, I got an idea for a cool t-shirt with some merch, right? And this logo is going to help us, increase our message. But also, by selling this product, we're going to make money that we can give to these organizations that are going to go out and then help us as men dignify women. Because why? That is the duty assigned to me by God.
Yeah. Well, and interesting, you've been in the for-profit world your whole career. Mm-hmm. I've been in nonprofit now for a decade, but still most of my career, because I'm old, as you like to point out, has been on the for-profit side. The beauty of the for-profit side in terms of mindset, if you have the right mindset, is to constantly create value for your customers. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist in the nonprofit world, but it's rare. When you're in the for-profit world, that's what you're constantly focused on. So in this case, we're talking about membership, right? We have members. So what are we going to do for them constantly so that we're creating value for them? What is value for them? You and I talk about that all the time. You have to define even what that is. Mm-hmm. And so that's the reason why, as you and I talked about it more, we're like, let's not just do another nonprofit.
Yep.
We have, you and I, as you said, both from marketing and sales backgrounds, from for-profit worlds. We know what it's like to put together programs that create value for customers. Mm-hmm. So it's better for you and me, as we think about how to do this, to have that mindset instead of the nonprofit mindset.
Yeah. And I think, man, I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful. I know how much I would enjoy just we do it Saturdays, sometimes Sundays, and we do this podcast and we talk. And honestly, granted, we don't have tens of thousands of viewers. We don't have thousands of viewers. We don't have hundreds of viewers. We have like 10 viewers at the moment. But you know what?
Family members too.
Yeah. It starts someplace.
Sure.
And, I'm excited to watch this grow. And I know, I've had people reach out to me on LinkedIn to say, hey man, I saw your video. Here's the hard thing that I'm doing this week, right? Like we put out a challenge to people and people responded. And to me that says like, it's slow, but I would prefer that it grows slowly initially so that we can refine our message. We can refine the topics that we want to talk about. We can refine the merchandise that we want to come up with, because ultimately we know that we're on the right path. And clearly, as is evidenced by our technical capabilities, we don't know what we're doing, right? We know that we've got a good idea.
There's not a lot of value creation in our tech abilities.
But here's where I think we're going to differentiate ourselves from a nonprofit, trying to do the exact same thing. And I don't know that there is a nonprofit trying to do the exact same thing. But because we come from a marketing for-profit world, we also know that market research says like, hey, if we get feedback from men in the Brotherhood that say, hey guys, I'd love to hear you guys talk about this, or I'd love to hear you talk about this other thing. Or, hey, what if you guys do an in-person seminar and we bring, this first group of Brotherhood members, Sheepdog Brotherhood members together, and we brainstorm about what year 2 looks like. That's the idea. We want the, I think Brotherhood suggests that there isn't necessarily anyone who is at the head of this Brotherhood.
Right.
It is us trying to lift one another up, in some cases, pull others out of the muck, and get us all to a place where I'm holding you accountable, you're holding me accountable, even if it isn't on a phone call, like, hey, Doug, I know you had this thing and you're struggling, but rather, boy, I, as Doug Hewlett, man, I don't want to let my brother down, who I know he's making a good decision today. He's going to do something that's going to help to dignify the women. He's not going to make a bad choice. Let's say, use pornography as an example. You know, knowing that I've got you, that, you know, you're trying to do the same thing and hold yourself to that standard. I don't want to let you down.
Yeah.
Even if it isn't, sometimes it's easier to let yourself down than it is to let someone else down.
You bet.
And if I know that, like, I've got you who are making good choices, you're helping me hold myself to a standard that I may not hold myself to. And how do I dignify a woman and check out porn at the same time? Like, those two things can't be happening.
No.
And being a part of this, working on this with you, like, man, that's not even a draw, right? I mean, it's out there. It's always like, hey, come check out these.
It's always
women.
inviting you.
Yeah. But being a part of this brotherhood with some of these other guys that are starting to come to us and say, hey, I want to be a part of this. Yeah. Okay, I've got to hold myself to a different standard. And
it starts to have, Doug, what was that HBO series, A Band of Brothers? Remember that?
Yeah.
It starts to have that feel. It's like we're in a battle. We're in a war. It's hard. The enemy is strong. But when we band together as brothers and hold each other accountable and have each other's backs, we can win, right? It starts to feel like that. And I think, you know, I told you, was it last week? Yeah, last week I was speaking at the Oklahoma Men's Conference, and 1,000 men there. It's incredible. And there is a hunger out there right now. Men sense deeply that there's something wrong, not just with the culture, but with men in the culture. And I would even go as far to say men are the problem with the culture. And
well,
so there's yeah, exactly. So the culture right now is creating, and has been for a few decades now, weak men. Weak men in a culture leads to weak culture. Weak culture leads to devastation. And there's a hunger about, we're not just going to go along with that. But there's also like, yeah, okay, but what do I do? Right. And so this is an opportunity right here where we're saying, hey, let's band together.
That's step
as
one.
brothers.
That's step one is find a group of like-minded men and become a part of that organization. Become a part of it.
Yeah.
Even if it isn't us, right? Even if it isn't joining the Sheepdog Brotherhood.
Right.
Go find men that are trying to be better, that are trying to hold themselves to a higher standard.
100%.
And go get involved.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things we're working on right now, as you know, so I'm going to say this is sort of addressed to the audience, but creating a website, creating a proper podcast channel, because, hey, we're 10 weeks in, right? I mean, that's 10. That's 20 is like the threshold. Like, if you don't make it past 20, it ain't happening.
Yeah.
So we're halfway to that first, big milestone. But we have some plans for at least the first things we want to roll out are some merchandise. And merch, again, for taking the proceeds and giving them to organizations that we know are helping to uplift women and empower women and to help them understand their dignity. And through that, we're going to teach ourselves how to uphold women, how to dignify them. So be on the lookout for an actual podcast channel, or like a podcast hosted on major platforms, a website. What are some of the other things that you'd like to be able to include?
I think too, in my experience with Exodus 90, you and I experience with Acts retreats. Maybe some of the listeners know what those things are, but not just this digital thing where there's information flowing out. I think there's something to be said, and this doesn't have to be this way for everybody, but there's also something to be said, I think, for getting together face to face with men and talking about these issues, right? Because then there's more of a personal sharing of what's going on. So if it's a group of 5 men locally, for example, maybe they go to the same church and they're talking about, in this particular Sheepdog Brotherhood thing of dignifying women, I'm kind of struggling. in this area, right? Like you mentioned one example a while ago, but there are many. Struggling in my relationship with my spouse, for example. Here's what's going on.
My
daughter, my mom, my sister,
coworker,
absolutely. And sharing that with men, and a lot of times, as we know, if men are more likely to be vulnerable around other men if they feel it's a safe environment to do so. We've seen that in Acts retreats. And then guess what? As you share that, other men may have and likely have been through some kind of experience already, come out the other side, and they can say, hey, here's what happened to me, and here's what I did right, and here's what I would do differently if I did it over again. Why don't you think about trying something like this, right?
It's like an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Right? Like think about back, I remember having shop class, in elementary or middle school. Like there was a guy, Mr. Butterfalls. He's probably dead by now.
Mr. What?
Butterfalls was his name.
Butterfalls?
Butterfalls. But like,
what an awesome name.
Yeah. There was something to learn from him. He had a way about him that showed like, hey, I've seen some stuff. And here's how I handle that. And I think, that's sort of what we're trying to show is, if you're in a group of all the same aged men, you're all probably going to be doing the same like knucklehead stuff. But, I know that I've had the great honor of knowing some veterans, right, who have been through things that I could never imagine having gone through, and what they've learned from it and how they've been able to change their lives and take that lesson and apply it to something else. And if we can amass young guys, older guys, even older than you guys,
is that possible?
I don't know. They're probably dead. But if we can get these guys together, there's a lot that we can all learn from each other. And I love this idea of us being able to be live. Let's get to a point where, every quarter or twice a year or once a year, we get together as a group of the Sheepdog Brotherhood. And
sounds like a convention to me.
Yeah, but the idea is, imagine when you're out in public and you're wearing your Sheepdog Brotherhood gear, we get to a point where somebody knows, hey, I know that logo and I know what that stands for. And that's a dude that, man, if the SHIT hits the fan, you're out for dinner and you're on a patio with your wife having dinner and something goes down. Like, I want the Sheepdog Brotherhood to be men that that are willing to, as a sheepdog would do, lay down their life for another, because that's what we've been called to by Jesus, to lay down their life for another. I want to get to a group, to a point where people recognize what the Sheepdog Brotherhood is, what they stand for, and it be an aspirational thing that other people want to join and say, those guys are on the right path. They're not perfect. They are all flawed and screwed up, but I know that they're trying. Those are the people that I want to be with.
Yeah. And again, I just think there's such a hunger for that. Even I hunger for it. It's like when you and I, it's just you and me, like talking to each other. When we get together, we lift each other up and we learn from each other, right? We get vulnerable with one another. We share very honestly about what's going on in each other's lives, the good and the bad. And then we try to help each other, right? It's like, hey, why can't we do that more at scale, if you will?
Yeah. Well, I'm excited. This was, I think, once we got most of the technical issues worked out today. I know you've got to go pick up your dog.
I do.
So we got to get out here. But so thank you so much for coming all the way down here to Barnett, Texas.
Yeah.
In the middle of no place where there's no sound except for the birds and the breeze. Thanks for coming down here. I had a great time last night, and we get to celebrate St. Patrick's Day together.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. Thanks for coming, and I look forward to episode 11.
Well, it's been awesome. It's been a great first 10 episodes. It went by so fast, which is incredible. And we've continued to evolve these ideas. And I think we're on to something pretty cool and exciting here. We're getting some good feedback from some of the dudes out there. So I'm really excited about where we're going.
So I guess let's leave with this call to action. If you want to be a part of the Sheepdog Brotherhood, if you want to be in the initial group, whatever that looks like, whatever it turns into, if you're interested, send a direct message to either Brett or myself through LinkedIn, or if you happen to have our actual email addresses, reach out, connect, and we're going to get you hooked up. Oh, and we actually have a winner for the Do Hard Thing Challenge.
Me
Right?
too.
Yeah, but I thought it was John?
Jim.
Jim.
My brother Jim.
Okay.
I
Not
don't
your-
say his
not your
last
physical,
name.
Like, not your.
No, like my spiritual brother.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I'm an only child, dude.
That's what I thought.
Jim. But you know what? I'd like to. Some of these things, hard things that men did, were so good. I think, Doug,
We're going to honor all of them.
we should. Yeah.
So we'll both be reaching out to you via DM and reward your doing hard things with some of our hats. Maybe not that hat, but a hat.
A better hat.
Yeah.
There are value creation, constantly improving.
Yep. So anyway, be on the lookout. But if you are interested in becoming one of the Sheepdog Brotherhood members, reach out to us, and we look forward to having you join our Sheepdog pack.
Yeah.
I don't know what sheepdogs travel in packs, herds,
Who knows?
wolf pack.
We'll Google it. We'll
Yeah.
find out. Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.